Well, hello and welcome to Bishop Talk. We are glad that you have taken time out of your schedule to be with us for this next conversation that we're about to have that's coming up. We're doing this series this particular month where our focus has been on the importance of faith in these uncertain times. And we've had some previous guests on that we invite you to go and find those YouTubes. You can give a listen to them. You can go to the sunshinecathedral.org and just click through the Bishop's page. You can find where we have the Bishop Talk Show listed as well as on YouTube for the Sunshine Cathedral. Today, we are honored to have Mr. N. McKnight with us, Reverend N. McKnight, a longtime friend of both of ours and an advocate and many things that he has going on in his life. And we're going to hear a little bit about from him in just a second. But the show is also done today with my co-host, my partner, not only in ministry, but in life of what it's 20 years this year. But anyway, that's more information that folks want to know. But anyway,
25,
oh, see.
25, but
Exactly.
whatever.
So anyway, co-host
It
and
was the
senior,
millennium. How can you forget? It was the millennium.
and
Mhm.
you see how I get treated after all these years still.
Yes, yes, I
See,
understand. You
yeah,
deserve
you
it
get,
too.
yeah, how you get treated. I remember. Hello.
So anyway, that's my importance of faith for this series is remembering things. But again, thank you for joining us again today. We're joined by Ian McKnight, who's going to tell us more about himself in a minute, and of course, co-host Bishop Durrell Watkins, senior minister of the Sunshine Cathedral. And so, Ian, we're going to just let you begin this talk for us today by telling us what you want us to know about you. And then we're just going to kind of pick up and there and go on with our conversation. So again, in McKnight, and I'm going to let you just do your social location, and again, things that you want our folks to know about you as we get in our conversation today.
I think that the place I would like to start is just to say how happy I am to be with both of you. I think our viewers, listeners need to know we have had a long association um, of friendship, but also of solidarity in work,
Mm,
in ministry, And I must tell the story of Sunshine Cathedral through both of you pioneering the church in Jamaica.
mm,
And despite, the challenges we had at the time, it was a safe space for LGBTQI plus folk to worship.
mm,
And in many instances, that has been the only time people have been affirmed um, and thought to feel good about themselves.
mm.
We did so under many trying and testing times, but that we did. And I would say that we planted a seed of spirituality for many people, of wholesomeness for many people. And when we talk today about uncertain times, hey, 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 those were some uncertain times. I love you both, and I respect you for the work you've done. I honor you for going against the odds in working with us in Jamaica, also in the Caribbean because we did all the Caribbean work. Believing in what needed to have been done. So thank you very much. You said it. I'm Ian, country boy, born in Jamaica, lived in Jamaica for the better portion of my life, all my life. Migrated 5 years now, and I'm living in Canada right now with my family. Um, did everything in Jamaica, schooling, everything and worked in Jamaica. Perhaps I'm better known for my work in human rights, with with HIV as a platform, with gay rights as a platform, with the rights of sex workers as a platform, the rights of marginalized groups as a platform, and I think several of that work culminates in what's called the Caribbean Vulnerable Communities Coalition, and it is a coalition of groups that have been made vulnerable by society.
mm.
Um, Happy to have been a part of that, but also there's several other organizations around the Caribbean. Jamaican Support for Life, JFLAG, the Caribbean Sex Workers Coalition, and I could go on and on. And thankfully, several of those groups are still alive
Mm,
and kicking,
mm,
still alive and kicking. So that's just a little bit about me. Faith has featured prominently in my life all my life. I grew up in and next door to the Roman Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church is where my initial grounding and whole faith forming took place, to the extent that I offered myself for training in priesthood, and spent 5 powerful years just knowing God, knowing God, knowing prayer, knowing silence, knowing meditation, knowing meditation. And that is it. That is the basis, the foundation of my spiritual work. Didn't complete seminary training, didn't make it to be a priest, left, and but always had my own, strong spiritual stirrings. And then I met many years later um, what is in Jamaica, the Universal Center of Truth for Better Living, a part of the UFBL umbrella groups. And that's where I explored metaphysical, you know, Christianity, and that has hooked me, and has had me over the years. So today I'm a part of the UFBL member organization here in Canada called Verity Center.
Mm.
And I'll stop there
Well,
for the time being.
you have had a full life of activism, and I was just honored to walk some of that journey with you, especially there in Jamaica, as you clearly say, when we were definitely in uncharted and uncertain times for the work that was happening there. And I've always considered you to kind of be one of the founding fathers of the LGBT movement that happened there in Kingston and in Jamaica and the surrounding area. And I know a lot of people throughout the Caribbean got energy from your work to inspire them to do the work that they needed to do, not only just with HIV and AIDS, but a lot of other things as well. So again, thank you for being here with us today. And I'm going to let Bishop Watkins have at you. And I know this is going to be a great conversation.
Hmm.
I believe that I just want people to know the significance of the work that you've done in the Caribbean and that you're doing for uh, Caribbean communities still. I mean, beyond the island. Um, I believe the Bahamas and Belize are the only two countries that have where same gender love and attraction aren't illegal. That they're the only one. They still don't offer a lot of protection. Certainly not marriage equality, but it has been decriminalized. I believe in only two Caribbean nations. Is that right?
And we have had some relaxation in in Guyana. Many of the challenges faced there have also been significantly eroded, is how I would put it.
Mm-hmm.
But the bulk of the region still stands resolute in some
Mm-hmm.
form or another of law that, doesn't help.
No.
Mm.
20 years ago, 19 years ago, we came to the Sunshine Cathedral. And within a year or two of that is when we started partnering with you a lot. And in those days, please God, it's better, surely, hopefully. But in those days, uh, the homophobia was so institutionalized that even when people were harmed, there would be no response really. Like, surely it's illegal to hurt people or kill people, but if they were gay, people seemed to get away with it. There were machete killings.
Mm.
I remember a funeral where various debris was rocketed, missiled
Mm.
into the funeral where the church where they were saying goodbye to someone. I remember a diplomat, even his diplomatic immunity did not protect him from an attack. I remember people who were so afraid of being labeled gay that if they were HIV positive, they wouldn't seek treatment for fear that people would connect one thing to the other. And so they would die slowly of AIDS rather than quickly by violence. Now, that was 20 years ago. Tell me it's better.
I wish I could. Honest to God, I wish I could. I wish I could, because any fraction of that remains endangers somebody.
Mm. Mm.
The lack of secure, clear, unequivocal support makes it a wide open gate of vulnerability for all. And many people, and just let me hasten to say, my perception, I get feedback or pushback, I should say, from several of my own colleagues, and I am open to that. What I can say is that the volatility, the flammable nature of all of this makes it so hard for so many people. It's a kind of perennial dance through the raindrops of uncertainty, that contorts itself to take on different shapes and forms. So, for example, within recent times, we've seen where, people have intercepted platforms like Grindr
Mm,
to be able to get at and harm people.
mm,
You know. So when you think that there might be some, you know, um, technology might give you a reprieve, here you are having to look at another way in which this is happening. And so, it is very hard. And I don't want to keep the attention on Jamaica alone because some of the nastiness that's happening in the United States, for example,
mm,
doesn't
Oh my
help,
God, no.
just doesn't help. It sends a signal to people that it's okay. It's okay. So, um, you asked, and I don't want to pivot around it, but in asking about whether things have changed or not, I say situations still remain so tense and so flammable, so easily flammable that it's not comforting.
mm.
Wow. And that's particularly uh, problematic, I think, because Jamaica is sort of the leading. It's most populated, the most sort of a leading power, really, in the Caribbean, sort of like the United States, in the Americas, or really even throughout the world. The United States is in moral decline. We like our commitment to peace has evaporated. Our commitment to the environment has evaporated. Our commitment to honoring our promises has evaporated. Our commitment to civil rights in our own country for our own people is evaporating. Due process, just ignoring. This since Jim Crow. This may be the most shameful time since Jim Crow in the United States. Well, Jamaica's sort of the big island in that area. So when the leader isn't someone you can really look up to, doesn't that make it more difficult for everybody else?
It certainly sends a very strong tone in multiple ways. And over the years, we have had many different vehicles of that tone going forward, the music, the pulpit, the print, politics, the leaders of the day. And if you don't, and that's what I mean by no concerted, strong voice that says it is it is wrong. So I'm not asking you to say, I condone X. That's not, it is wrong.
Mm.
To harm one person is wrong. To deny the rights of one individual is wrong. It's just wrong. And you see it in so many different ways around the world. Um, the example I give is it's okay for people to think, oh, Haitians and that voodoo thing, it's because of voodoo, and many people kind of dismiss Haitians until you become the one that's dismissed. Until you realize, oh God, I was busy helping to dismiss other groups, and here we are now at the point of being dismissed ourselves. And that's exactly what, and only what, human rights is about. It's about making sure that the rights of all are respected.
Mm.
To take away the rights of one group, any one group, is to leave the door wide open for the rights of all groups to be taken away.
When I would work, I would actually first started, it was because of the Human Rights Watch.
I was just thinking.
Jamaica was it was like at the top of the list. And, here we are all these years now that the United States is now on the Human Rights Watch list because of decline in policy, decline in safety, one decline after the next. And I wonder I just wonder, where does it go? It's like uh, watching it firsthand with you in Jamaica and responding to a lot of things firsthand in Jamaica. Uh, and now here we sit
Yeah.
here
Mm.
in America, uh, having to confront some things.
And some people, I'll say quickly, and cynically too, please don't let it get lost on you that even in terms of democracy and politics and election watching to ensure that a free, fair election happens,
Yeah.
Hmm.
sending envoys around the world for millions of years to, and I'm exaggerating for effect here, but to ensure that elections are free and fair you know, and all that comes down to is if we take our eyes off the gains we have made because we feel we have made those gains and those gains are so enshrined that we can become complacent, we're fooling ourselves. We're fooling ourselves. And where we are now in the world shows that so prominently. The way minorities are treated, the way migrants are treated around the world
Yeah.
is sad and shameful. And to become comfortable with that on one occasion and not think about it in all the other occasions is what is not good. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And since you've migrated to a country that does guarantee civil liberties and civil rights, and it's still within the Commonwealth, so like culturally, probably there's, you adapted probably pretty quickly, but also, is it just easier to breathe? Like, is this something? I know it's hard probably to leave your home, but also, do you feel safer and just more relaxed with your work that you can just live and love and do your work without triple bolting the doors for fear of someone's coming for you?
Well, we're going to talk about uncertain times and how faith plays an important role in that. And for me, being able to breathe and relax is firstly in my head, in my mind, in
Mm.
my heart, and in my soul. And wherever I go, I have to take that with me.
Mm.
That is what has worked for Ian. And I'm not saying it must work as a recipe for other people. I'm just saying that that is what has worked for me. I am able to get away from it all, and I'm good with that. However, one of the things I would say is it gives me no joy that the majority of other people can't breathe out like that,
Mm.
can't live their lives in an unapologetic way. It gives me very little joy. And so yeah, I'll say there's still some tension there. There's still some, how do I use? It's actually how I sum up my life is that I've all of this privilege that I have had, I'm willing to unleash it in any way possible to make life better for
Mm.
others. So whereas some of it might not have been my personal experience, I am willing to really use that privilege for others. So here we are
That
talking today. Sorry,
no, no,
here we are talking today, and it is to use the agency of my voice to do exactly
yes.
that.
Mm. Mm.
Well, that's a wonderful faith response, actually. That we all have privilege and we all have peril, and we get in a lot of trouble when we try to compare perils. Mine is worse, or scary, whatever. But we all have privilege and we all have peril. And some people think that if you name the privilege, you're just trying to make them feel bad for their privilege. No, privilege is something, if you have it, and everyone has, in some measure, someone has privilege over somebody. There's a pecking order in anywhere you go. But how are you going to use that now? Like, it's not just to ignore it and it's not to feel bad about it. It is to use it to use the privilege you have to aid other people in their peril so that they can so be less imperiled. And so that I think that is a faith response that you model so well, that yeah, we all have privilege and peril. What are we doing with our privilege to
Mhm,
help people in their peril?
mhm. Learned that from my parents, and so I use this to pay tribute to them. My late father Zacchaeus, he had a big, strong Bible name. Zacchaeus Matthias was his name, and if you look at what Zacchaeus means metaphysically, he was a strong leader who was willing to make a mistake, but also willing to make the spiritual work
Mm.
to to deal with it. And my mom, Carmen McKnight, both of them, I witnessed them using their privilege to just stamp all over any forms of discrimination. So I got it from. So, am I perfect? Hell no. But willing to use it as best as I can. And that's what all of this is about. How do we turn some of that around to make it better for other people?
Mm.
How do we lend voice and agency to situations when others can't? And
Mhm.
that's been a challenge for me.
You know, and going back to thinking about your time in Jamaica, um, and I think this kind of lends to the faith part of it. I always worried about you. It's like, when you was in Jamaica, we was going through a lot of stuff there. What would you say would be, in addition to faith and your parents' upbringing, would be one of the things you say is how did you survive? Why did you survive? I mean, you were an out person in Jamaica. It's like, uh, here's this guy who's about yay tall, but yet he's
Mhm.
a giant in the community and people respected him, they loved him, they listened to him. And it just amazed me thinking back to him at that time that this is someone who could have been easily attacked at any time or done, harm to. So what would you say? How did you make it? How did you make it out? What were some of your survival skills
Mhm.
during that time, as a personal faith? What were some of your survival skills?
Mm, I know a lot of your fear was shared by my siblings.
Mm,
They didn't rest well at all,
mm,
particularly because they weren't in Jamaica. Either siblings and extended family, parents, by several people. Um, and I don't think there's any one answer to this. I do know that some of it was also nestled in naivety.
mm, mm,
So
mm,
you kind of just kept going and doing this thing. And, you know, I mean, it started on the HIV platform. Some of what we did was like, what?
yeah.
When I look back at it now, I think perhaps, just perhaps, if we had known all of those things that
Mhm.
we now know, we wouldn't have done some of those things. And some people thought about us as crazy, starting a hospice without any of us having any kind of um, training in it or not knowing where the money was coming from. Some of it was crazy. Here's how I frame it though, and it's so entrenched in faith, is that if we get stuck with the facts, the tangibles, the things that we can see, the history, if we get stuck with those, we will be paralyzed. And it's the proverbial Lot's wife. If we keep looking back at those things which limit us, where we're coming from, and not seize the opportunities to move forward, progress will never be made.
Mm,
And that's uh, and God knows I don't want to make it sound as some grand theological, any such thing. That's why I'm framing it now. I'm framing it to say I cannot and will not get bogged down with the facts. You know, we say to the congregations and to our hearts all the time, if you open the cupboard and it is empty, if you open the purse and it is empty, it does not mean that the cupboard and the purse are the source of your goodness.
mm,
That's not where the source is. And so to be always looking to the source, which I call God, other people have other names for, because hey, let's preach now. Nobody has, you know, the patent on this name. Many of us
Right.
think yes. Well, if forget it. That supreme being doesn't care what
mm,
name you use. Get over it.
Yeah.
So because I call that person God doesn't mean I can't respect Jah, Jehovah, the works. But to know that that divine source, that divine being is where all things start and end. And so when I'm unable to figure out the facts or make sense of the facts, I know that the answers rest there. And then if I'm to tell you where that God is located, for me, it's within me. It's not this external being up there in the sky that I might see one day in the sweet by and by, but it is within me.
There's a spiritual experience that I had in Jamaica. I believe it was in Montego Bay, and it was life changing. And I've talked about it. I've preached about it. It was amazing, and it was in a hospice. And We went to see someone, and he was very frail. He was bedridden. He could barely speak. He could barely move. He was weak and double digit weight, probably not. Of course, we're still in pounds, and because we're the only ones who can't measure things properly. But anyway, he was um, very frail and weak, and seemingly at the end, and was alone. There was no staff there. Well, at that moment, he had all these medicines on his bed table that he had to get himself if he could. And we went there, and there were several of us, 4 or 5, his friends, I suppose. And Robert and I got to go. And I think it was you. Someone asked me to pray. And so I knelt by the bed and I held his hand. And this weak, dying, could barely even speak person gripped my hand with a strength that you would have thought he was an athlete. Like he was in prime condition. I mean, I don't think my hands ever been gripped so firmly. And we prayed. And then when we were done, he didn't let go. And so I just stayed there and we just held hands until he didn't let go. And I prayed for him for every day until I heard that he had passed. It took some months. I was surprised he lasted that long. But and this was already when there were effective treatments, but somehow he hadn't gotten them in time or diagnosed them. I don't even know what his story was. But to enter into that moment of frailty and trust and sharing and just human connection and a love that I felt without knowing his name, that was a powerful, and I've remembered that to people over and over as I'm doing now, I guess. But you facilitated that. You made that happen. So when people think of Ian McKnight, I know they think of boardrooms and members of parliament and university presidents. But you also were on the ground holding hands and introducing people to, making connections at the end of life. Like, I don't even know where you got all the vision and all the energy. Well, I guess it's from that God within. But yeah, people see this, maybe almost a bureaucrat or politician or diplomat, which is all good and all true. But there's a lot of stuff people don't see. And so I hope that young man, I hope that moment meant something to him. It changed my life.
Hmm.
And that was
The
an Ian McKnight event. That was a facilitation.
the way how I say, bishops, is that all of that has saved my life.
Hmm.
And this is perhaps selfish, the encounters like you just described saved my life, brought tremendous meaning to my life. And so I say it all the time. I think I don't know what people get from me, but I know what I get from people.
Hmm.
I know what I get from people. I know what those moments when you think somebody is, is dying, and oh God, again the facts. You have, you're wasting away. You, and all of those facts, but in it, the strength of faith, the strength of of belief that it's all right, the the unapologetic commitment to prayer in that case, those are the things that just give me so much life and so much strength. And if I'm to sum it up, I'd say people have entrusted their lives to me in a way that is scary, that humbles me, and that really keeps me grounded. And for that, I'm so grateful. And I mean people who are on this earth plane right now, but who aren't. And many times, I'm telling you, many times when I'm not sure how I'm going to make it or where I'm going to go, and I'm frustrated, I simply call forth those ancestors, the many people on whose shoulders we stand, the many people who didn't make it to antiretroviral treatment, those who were hacked to death, those who, died a peaceful life. They're rooting for me, and I can tell you that they're rooting for us
Yeah.
in a powerful way. Um, and I give thanks for that in my life.
I
So
know.
when we talk again about the uncertain times,
Mm,
that's the fuel in the tank.
mhm,
Vapors, even at the time when you're just going on vapors and you realize, oh well, I went 40 miles and my gas gauge was on empty.
mm,
How did that happen?
mm.
It's those things, it's those encounters.
Well, in reflecting, I could not have you here and not mention someone who strangely I still call on today from time to time when I think about a lot of his work. And I want you to reflect on him for just a moment, and it's Dr. Robert Carr.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I know he was it's his work, his passion for what was going on there. Um, and you and he both was kind of a little bit in the same boat in that you could have left during the height of all of that, but you didn't. Uh, and I know Robert was deep in it with you. So if you just kind of reflect on Dr. Robert Carr for just a second.
It's ironical because the anniversary of his death was this past week.
Really.
And each time we reflect on him, a young man
Yeah.
who died very suddenly of a heart attack. But when he died, I mean, his impact was just amazing. So Robert was a friend, a friend. We spent hours chatting, laughing, crying, a friend. He was a visionary. He, you know, and by the way, I'll say that when we first met, it was, why is this academic coming here to question me about things? I was by that over this whole foolishness. So I wasn't very polite. I'd seen too many academics come and write papers of the work we're doing. And I remember him saying, my God, you guys have so much here that it astounds me.
Mm.
And again, Robert had privilege. He had lived in the United States, had a PhD. He could go anywhere. But he decided to stay in Jamaica and to help to build the thing. He just caught wind of that vision and just took it and ran with it. Um, I say it this way too. Many people who start things are not the people needed to continue it.
Mm, mm,
And so, yes, I started it. Where he took it, I had zero idea about.
mm.
It was just not my vision. I'll say the same thing as I give testimony to Candace Livermore, who now heads Jamaica AIDS Support for Life. Where she's taken it, it's incredible. And I just know as a principle in life that your task is not to do any and everything, but to surrender, to let go, to pass that baton on so that somebody else with a vision can take it and go with it. And that was Robert. Robert just came and he took it. We complemented each other. In fact, I stepped down and became a deputy to him. Um, and it was joyous to work in that supportive capacity. And then as he was doing that, it was as though his vision just exponentially broadened, and he just brought the Caribbean in, and then it was on the world stage. Um, and that was just, oh man, that was just beautiful because it challenged leaders at all levels to stop thinking and talking some of and this whole what he called the bullshit theory. He's legendary for it, so you can look that up on YouTube, um, because a lot of what was being given at the time was lip service, and he called people into account for that and challenged people. So that vision lives on. It lives on in so many different ways, through the Robert Carr Foundation that's funding work across the world, through CVC, of course, that's doing work in the Caribbean, through Jamaica Aid Support, where he helped to build some things, and through so many other. He saw the vision and the work the three of us were in which were involved in the Caribbean. He got a hold of that and he was enthused by it. He just marveled at the fact that we could have this faith-based initiative happening in Jamaica, but also in the region that just made people's lives better. Here's to Robert Carr.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Uh,
Yes, yes, yes.
I know we're pushing some time here, but I'd love for you to share a little bit about your work that you're doing there in Canada now and the impact that you're having.
Well, the irony is, and the secret is that I thought I was going to be retiring from HIV work, and came to Canada and landed in a most marvelous organization called the Toronto People with AIDS Foundation, PWA. Well, that has pulled out some things in me that are just life-changing. And it's not just HIV, good old HIV. It's good old HIV with all the intersectionalities of of primarily of racism,
Mm.
of you know migrant people, some of whom I served in Jamaica, some of whom I served in Guyana, around the Caribbean and Africa, coming to Canada and realizing suddenly that some of the services that existed before are fading for them.
Mm.
And how do we tackle some of those systems that are hugely discriminatory, that do not look like us, that do not speak like us? So how do we look at some of the issues facing men, some of the issues facing women, some of the issues facing the LGBTQI plus communities? Um, some of us come and quite naively get involved in substance use, primarily because we don't know. The scene here allows you to get hold of that very easily. And for us to see how that's eroded some of the lives of several newcomers, migrants, refugees to Canada. That's what I'm doing. And it really gives me a lot of grounding and soul stirring and growth. Toronto People with AIDS Foundation. And then that's coupled with my work with the Verity Center. And, it's a different phase in my life, in my spiritual life, since I've become a licensed minister. And it's been able to explore my vocation, explore my calling at another level. I pay tribute to the bishop, the late Bishop Edgerton Clark. He was my first bishop in Jamaica. And when I went to him and said, I was just coming out of high school as um, a very younger man than I am now. And I said, Bishop, I have a calling to priesthood and I want to become a priest. And he said, among other things, the thing that I never forget is that he said, I am going to give you an opportunity for you to explore your vocation, for you to explore your vocation. And I explored my vocation and, through prayer, through meditation, through the silence for 5 years in the Roman Catholic Seminary. And it didn't stop there. Today, I'm exploring my vocation as a minister of the word and just building that part of my life.
Wow.
I do want to give a little plug. The Verity Center that you're at is part of the Universal Foundation for Better Living, started by Johnny Coleman, Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman. the Reverend Sheila McKeithen is the current president of UFBL. She's only the third leader they've ever had. So it's been started by and led by powerful women since the beginning. And she actually, her center, in addition to the whole foundation, she also has her own parish, and it's in Kingston, and her services are online. So the Universal Truth Center, and I think it's spelled CENTRE. It's the British spelling for
The
those of us
British
in the
spelling.
U.S. And so a lot of the wisdom you're hearing from Ian, that's just New Thought metaphysics. It's common. It's the approach of UFBL, and you can have it yourself. Sheila McKeithen is sharing these things. They're in Jamaica, and it's online. And of course, if you're in Toronto, there's the Verity Center. So if you've been encouraged by some of these spiritual perspectives, they're available to you.
Well, Ian,
Thank you for the plug.
I'm going to start wrapping this up here, but I do want to give you the opportunity to kind of give us the bidding word or the final word, and just allow you to let that be what you need to be about faith in these uncertain times, your faith journey. So, Reverend Ian McKnight, would you give us the final word?
I like to dissect topics, and part of what I would ask is whenever was it certain times? Whenever in the history of humanity was it ever absolutely certain? And I dare say, having not lived for all of those times, that at each stage and phase of life, people saw it as uncertain. And there were always things that happened, occurrences that made it look uncertain. So humanity has lived with uncertainty forever, is how I would say it. That can be no consolation whatsoever to people whose very lives are being eroded by several different preventable things. And sometimes, we get in our high horses and we pontificate about this, that, and the other. But when on a daily basis your life looks dim and gloomy, it's hard. So we want to acknowledge that. We want to acknowledge that it is very difficult and it is hard for many people. We want to acknowledge that many of the courses that people have set out deliberately working on and aiming towards has suddenly been pulled from underneath. And that's where uncertainty comes in. If I were to say one thing, though, I would say that the God within gives us all the ability to triumph in unexpected ways. So I speak that word to all of us today. I speak it to my heart, I speak it from my heart, and I speak it to myself as I speak it to everybody. And I say, uncertain times simply must fade away, must disappear in the face of faith. Uncertain times simply must take a back seat when the glory of God is brought into the picture. And people ask, how the hell do we bring the glory of God into this situation? And it is simply that, acknowledging God in all situations, no matter what it looks like. And particularly when it doesn't look like, it doesn't add up to what we think God looks like, God acts like. To call forth the name from within us, but also to unleash it in every single situation and leave it there. Because many times we think we have to keep doing things, helping God, the divine source, out because we're not seeing it happening quite the way we expect it to happen. And especially that timetable that you're operating by is not the timetable I had in mind. So we have to help God out, and I'm saying just leave it there. Because goodness must triumph. God's glory must triumph. Are we prepared and willing to give it the space, the opening to come to the fore? Start and be responsible for that only in your heart, first of all, and the rest is bound to follow. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank
Thank
you for
you.
taking time out of your schedule to be with us. And wow, just
Beautiful. Good stuff.
yes, beautiful. I don't want to add anything else to it. You gave us a great ending. So thank you everyone for joining us here today on Bishop Talk. Thank you, Reverend Ian McKnight. Thank you, Bishop Watkins. And thank you to the community for being a part of this today. We hope to see you again in the near future for our next episode. Again, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Bless you all. Thank you.